Welcome back to Finder on Hiran Online. Britain is the second largest donor to Somalia. How is British aid helping Somalia to recover?
A lot of our aid still is humanitarian assistance, so going directly to those who've suffered most from the conflict in Somalia. But we want to move as much as possible more into development and to more sustainable assistance. So this includes areas like health, and yesterday with the Prime Minister we announced a new essential health services programme pilot, which will provide vital services directly to poor people, particularly to improve to prevent child mortality and the deaths of mothers in childbirth. We're also looking at the more strategic long-term causes of instability in Somalia. So we're working with the security sector, and we've announced that we will pay the salaries of 1,800 policemen, and we expect to be very closely engaged in the elections which take place in 2016. We're also looking to provide stabilisation in areas which have been newly recovered from Al-Shabaab, and we're working very closely with the government both on cities like Kismayo and Baidoa, which I visited, and where we are providing quick response programmes, but also into some of the areas liberated by the recent Amazon. Children can play football at night, people feel safe to go out on the streets of Kismayo at night. We've also rehabilitated the football stadium in Kismayo, and again that's a great place for the community to come together to play sport, which is something that binds people from across the community. We'll also look at rehabilitating police stations and supporting the interim Juba administration with public financial management and rehabilitating its buildings so its ministers can start to serve the people.
Is it an achievable goal to hold elections in 2016?
And we're committed to supporting the government to achieve that. We recognise that a lot needs to be done. This will be the first elections in Somalia since the 1960s, but we believe it would be a huge step forward in demonstrating the progress that Somalia has made in recent years. The government has set out its plans for setting up the Constitutional Commission, for the state building process, and for putting in places institutions like the Boundaries Commission and the Elections Commission, which would make elections possible. And we expect to work very closely with the government, with our international partners and with the UN to help them put all those building blocks in place for elections in 2016. I myself have worked in Congo before, a country which, like Somalia, suffered from decades of conflict, but still managed to run successful elections which respected the will of the people. So I really believe that we can get a lot done.
More than 130 Somali MPs are demanding the president's resignation. What do you think of this looming crisis?
Of course, in Somalia as anywhere else, it's our strict policy not to intervene in internal politics. What I would say is that given the challenges that Somalia faces, the security threat from Al-Shabaab, the need to help the poorest Somalis and get economic development going, and as we talked about, the urgent need to prepare for the 2016 elections, that a prolonged period of instability, of conflict between institutions would be very harmful. So we fully respect Parliament, we fully respect the MPs, but we believe that a prolonged political crisis would not be in Somalia's best interest.
There are ongoing talks between Somalia and Somaliland. What are your thoughts on these negotiations?
There have been a regular series of talks between the two sides brokered by the Turkish government. We strongly encourage those talks and we very much hope they can make some real progress, including on issues of shared interest like aviation airspace and other confidence building measures that can build confidence between the two sides. It's for the Somali people themselves to determine how they see their future, we will not interfere in that, but we very much encourage constant engagement between the federal government and the government of Somalia.
Bisharo waxaa la ogeysiinayaa dhammaan dadweynaha Soomaaliyeed ee gaadiidleyda ah in shirkadda NGK ay idin hayso gandeelayaal ama qarxyaal casri ah.
Assalaamu calaykum. Wa calaykum salaam. Waxaan ku qabtaa walaal. Waxaan ku arkay quwadii oo aan muxuu ahayn dhumayso tabardaro awood la'aan iyo jarays marmarka qaarkood oo jareenay baawur. Ragii waxay yiraan service aan ku sameeynay laakiin wali dhibaatadii way haysataa. Bal waa NGK fiirinayna.
shirkadda NGK ayaa ah shirkadda ugu horeysa adduunka ee soo saarka iyo tayada spark plug. Haddaba haddii aad tahay qof doonaya in motorka gaarigiisu uu noqdo mid cimri dheer, isticmaal NGK spark plug. haddaba la xiriir xafiisyada NGK ee Soomaaliya. shirkadda NGK ayaa xafiisyo ku leh Muqdisho, Hargeysa, Kismaayo iyo Boosaaso. haddaba ha noqon mid isticmaala spark plugs tayadiisu aad u hooseyso. shirkadda NGK waxay idin haysaa spark plugs ama gandeelayaal jumla ah. wixii faahfaahin intaas dheer kala xiriir emailada, telefoonada shaashada ka muuqda.
gaariga star bahad ballanteena waa NGK igu hadlay idinkana idin imaado. Masha Allah, NGK.
What support does the British government give on implementation of federalism agenda in Somalia?
So the British government has provided both practical and political support. So, for example, we politically very strongly support the Addis Agreement between the federal government and the interim Juba administration. We also provided financial assistance to IGAD, which was crucially involved in brokering those talks. I visited Baidoa myself. So we will be engaged on the discussions around integrating other regions and state building there. We visit Puntland very regularly. We have important development programs there, but we also strongly encourage a closer relationship between the government of Puntland and the federal government here in Mogadishu. We have programs for supporting engagement between the federal government and the central regions, brokered by NGOs, so we will remain very active in this. In an ideal world, we would hope that as much as possible of the state formation process, of the interim state formation process, could be completed by 2014, that the discussions on the shape of federalism in Somalia can take place as much as possible in 2014, to leave us more time to prepare for the elections in 2016. But I think that with the Addis Agreement and the interim Juba administration, with the current negotiations around Baidoa, and with a better relationship between the government in Mogadishu and Puntland, that we're seeing real progress on this agenda at the moment.
Newly liberated areas are the most disadvantaged places, and sometimes there is power vacuum. What help is given to address these difficulties?
We've created in Somalia something called the Somalia Stability Fund with other partners that has already made several $1 million available to the government to spend how it wishes on stabilisation, including in these newly recovered areas. And as soon as we can, we will start to set up some of our own projects in those areas. We're also working closely with AMISOM and with IGAD to see what support they can give. It is extremely difficult, and these are areas where the infrastructure has been damaged, where there aren't many partners we can work with to get projects up and running, and where issues can be very politically sensitive. So sometimes things move more slowly than we would want. But I've been impressed by how focused the government, and in particular the Ministry of Interior, have been on addressing this issue and learning lessons from the past. So I'm optimistic. In Baidoa is a good example. Again, we have a portfolio of projects in Baidoa, again including refurbishing the stadium, including support to removing unexploded weapons and bombs, and providing youth training, vocational and rehabilitation centres. So we know from other places this isn't easy, but we're very focused on trying to get this right and working closely with the government to.
What advice would you give the Somali diaspora around the world, in particular British Somalis?
an amazing number of returned diaspora, including from the British diaspora, and I'm incredibly proud of their real determination to make a contribution to Somalia. And we meet them in all walks of life, from the security sector to the health sector, the humanitarian sector, MPs and members of government. And their real determination to make a difference in Somalia, to help the political process, to create businesses that will make jobs, to improve institutions, state institutions that have been destroyed, is hugely promising and uplifting. So I think that would be the message I would give to the diaspora, is talk to other members of the diaspora who have returned, hear from them about their hopes and fears, but I hope they will hear a very positive message. Myself, I would say that now that we spend more time out in Mogadishu, out in the rest of Somalia, you can see real progress. Even in the 9 months that I have been here, I've seen new buildings going up, traffic jams in Mogadishu, which didn't happen when I first came here, which is a strange sign of prosperity, but the shops are full, businesses are opening, things look much busier, and people, when we were out at night recently, we saw how much more activity there was at the streets at night, and people tell us that this is something that just wasn't true a few years ago.
We come to the end of the interview. Give us your closing remarks, His Excellency Ambassador Wigan.
Thank you very much to Hiran for coming, for holding this interview. I think this is one of the first proper interviews that we've run at the embassy, so it's again, it's a sign of us becoming a full embassy running in Somalia. So thank you to Hiran, and thank you for this opportunity of speaking direct to your viewers, both here in Somalia and in the diaspora.